Jackie Savitz is the Chief Policy Officer of North America for Oceana, a nonprofit organization working to protect and restore the Earth's oceans. Jackie, welcome to the Climate Pod.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Well, Oceana celebrated its 20th anniversary this month. Can you tell us more about its mission?
Sure. We were started 20 years ago in order to fill a gap that many of the funding community felt existed in the environmental movement, where the oceans really weren't getting enough attention. And so we were set up to be all oceans all the time. And that was 20 years ago. And that's what we've been doing ever since, mostly focusing on restoring fisheries. We think fish can be an excellent source of protein to feed the world if they're maintained sustainably and not overfished. And also we are working to stop ocean pollution, which includes pollution from things like oil spills, plastic pollution, and the like. So those are the main things that we focus on.
And how does Oceana go about accomplishing these goals?
Well, we do campaigns, which means that we identify specific things that we want to see change. The change we want to see in the water, how do we make that happen? We identify who is a decision maker who has the ability to make the decision we want. And then we focus very specifically on getting that outcome. So we don't work on everything. We choose a limited number of campaigns that we can focus on and make sure we win them. Otherwise, we're afraid we would become too diluted and do just enough to lose on everything.
Well, everyone listening to this podcast or watching this video knows that a successful COP26 is critical if we're going to achieve a healthy planet and vibrant ocean life. What is your message? You're going to Glasgow. What is the message that you're hoping to get across while you're there?
You know, it's funny how the ocean's message is really not that different from the overall message. But when it comes right down to it, if we can't stop relying on fossil fuels, if we can't stop letting the fossil fuel industry sort of tell us what our energy economy should look like, we are not going to address climate change. We really need to shift away from fossil fuels and toward clean energy if we want to solve this problem at all, if we want to have any chance of solving the problem. From the ocean standpoint, that's important because the oceans are absorbing about a third of the carbon dioxide we're putting out there. So in a way, they're doing us a huge service. But in the process, it's making the ocean sick. It's causing ocean acidification, which is bad for corals and other marine animals, and it's causing sea level rise. It's causing shifts in habitat for various species, a lot of turmoil. And so in a way, we're saving the oceans from climate change. In another way, there are these solutions that actually involve the ocean in one way or the other. And so those are the things we want to try to get across and ultimately try to push away from things like offshore drilling, which is bringing more carbon into the equation from the ocean and bringing in this threat of oil spills at the same time, and preventing us from moving on to the clean energy that we know we need. Which can also be based in the ocean, you know, in the form of offshore wind. And so there's an ocean problem, there's an ocean solution. And if we find those solutions, it'll be good for the oceans, but it'll also be good for all of us.
Do you think that world leaders really get it? Do they get just how important the oceans are, not only to the natural world, but to the economy, you know, to the absorption of some of that carbon dioxide that you're talking about it? Do they understand how important it is that we stop warming the planet in order to protect the oceans?
You know, I can't speak for all world leaders, right? In a broad brush. Some of them definitely get it. And that's where we see opportunity. And I think we're lucky now that President Biden understands that and has made a priority out of it. But there have been world leaders, especially the leaders from small island states who are seeing their lands being flooded, who have gotten this for a long time and have been saying, come on, the rest of you, let's get with the program. And I think what it comes down to is there is a bit of a stranglehold among politicians by, you know, the historical energy industry or the fossil energy industry. And that can cause politicians to sometimes misbehave and make decisions that don't really benefit the rest of us. And it's only when we can break that stranglehold that the fossil companies, the oil and gas and coal companies have over us, that we're really going to see progress here. We see that in the United States today in our legislature, in our Congress. So I think they get it. A lot of them really get it, and it's really just going to be a matter of breaking that hold.
Does the international aspect of oceans make them harder to govern and protect?
Absolutely. Ocean problems don't know boundaries, but oceans do have boundaries. And part of the challenge with a lot of this international decision making is it tends to be consensus driven. And so when you get, countries that feel like they're not going to be the beneficiaries of certain outcomes, and they don't want to agree to them, then, that's going to slow the process down. And that's really a big part of the reason why Oceana tends to focus a lot at the national scale. We have offices in various countries around the world where we work on national policy because it takes us out of that international consensus space. And we are able to hold the decision maker accountable for their decision. But at the same time, a lot of these decisions do require international agreements and international conversations, and that's what this event is going to be about.
Yeah, is there any particular outcome or agreement related to oceans or marine life that you're hoping gets, resolved from this COP26?
We're always looking for any sort of steps that can be taken away from the direction of fossil fuels and steps that can be taken in the direction of clean energy. People think, oh, you're an ocean conservation group. What do you mean you support offshore wind development? Isn't that the industrialization of the ocean? And, I grew up as an ocean lover kid thinking we'll never industrialize the ocean. That's a bad idea. Except in this case, we're doing that to save the oceans, right? And the rest of us. And so, any steps that can be taken in the direction of clean energy, whether it be on land or in the oceans, and ending things like subsidies for fossil fuels, which are continuing to keep those industries afloat, are going to be good steps.
So, as Chief Policy Officer of North America for Oceana, what policies are you trying to push that help protect land and restore our oceans here in America?
Oh, well, thanks for asking that. The main thing we're trying to do that's related to climate change is we're trying to get permanent protection against offshore drilling. And this is something that, we do a lot of drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, and a lot of people think that's kind of just the way it's going to be. But we've never drilled that much in the Pacific, a little bit, but not that much. And we don't drill in the Atlantic. And the Eastern Gulf of Mexico is actually also protected. And so what we've been fighting for is to end the expansion of drilling into those places, because that's where the industry is looking for their expansion. And there's been a lot of discussion about that, even back to George W. Bush, who really first kind of opened up that conversation. And we've been fighting that ever since. And we've been very successful at building a constituency against offshore drilling along the coast among business leaders, local elected officials, people who have an interest in clean coasts and the economies that come with them. And we've been really successful at that, so much so that we were able to stop President Trump from expanding offshore drilling. And he ended up putting in protections for Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas that are 10-year protections. And that's because there is a constituency on the coast that don't want to see offshore drilling. And so now we're trying to make that permanent. And we're working on that through the Build Back Better Act, which is being discussed in Congress now. We really need the Senate to keep that piece of it in. Don't let the oil industry tell you otherwise. And it is one of the ones that's being debated. But if we can do this, then we can say, all right, we're still going to have some drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. We need to look at that. But in the meantime, we know it's not going to get any bigger. And that would be a really good step forward.
Yeah, and in addition to all the damage done by offshore drilling, overfishing and illegal fishing also just wreaks havoc on marine life. Can you just tell us a little bit about what some of the problems marine life faces as a result of overfishing?
Sure. Yeah. With overfishing, there's a science to how much fish we can actually take out of the ocean if we want the fish to reproduce and allow us to keep doing that. And so when we allow science to drive our fishery management policies, to set the right limits for how much we can take, to protect the habitats that these fish require in order to grow and be healthy in their communities, and also to prevent this thing called bycatches, which is when you're trying to go for one kind of fish, but you catch a whole lot of other stuff that isn't what you wanted, but usually ends up dead. We put policies in place to regulate in those three areas. We can actually cause fisheries to recover and go up, and we end up with more fish, more potential to feed people. And so that's something we really push for in the United States, is that sort of sustainable fishing, the sustainable fishery management. It's going to allow us to keep living off the interest and not keep digging into the principle of it. If you take the bank account analogy. And the other thing that we've been very focused on is this issue of illegal fishing internationally. There's a pretty amazing amount of fishing going on in our oceans. We built this tool called Global Fishing Watch with Google and another group called SkyTruth, where you can actually see the international fishing fleet and how intense it is. China is huge. They are fishing everywhere. They go out to sea, and sometimes they don't come back for a year at a time. They stay on those
Wow.
boats and they keep fishing, and other boats come and take the fish and bring them provisions. That is extremely destructive. It's highly subsidized. And so in some cases it's legal because there aren't necessarily laws on the high seas, but in other cases they're fishing in places where they're not supposed to be. So Global Fishing Watch helps us see like where that illegal fishing is happening. But that's something that's causing depletion of fisheries for nearshore communities that might be, dependent on those fish. And then all of a sudden, where are the fish? And they've all been taken away. And it also has opened up this problem of forced labor at sea, where they're taking fishermen aboard to be fishermen, and with the theory that they're going to get paid and have a job, and then they get out to sea and they can't get off the boat. And in many cases are being abused and poorly treated, and it's slavery, modern day slavery. And so illegal fishing has these really kind of dark aspects to it. And we really need to internationally get a handle on it so that A, we can have sustainable fish, but B, that we're not, mistreating our fellow humans.
Yeah, and plastic pollution is just a huge problem for oceans. Can you give our audience an idea of just how big and how bad the plastic pollution problem is?
It's big and it's bad and it's getting bigger. Right now, it's about 2 dump truck loads of plastic are getting into the oceans every minute. Every minute. And a lot of this is single-use plastic. This is packaging, plastic bottles, plastic sachets. Everything we buy now comes in a little plastic bag thing, because that's the cheapest way for these companies to get us these goods. But we use it once and we throw it away. And there's a lot of talk about how do we solve that problem. There's only one way to solve that problem, and that's to stop using so much plastic, to go back to the kind of alternatives we used to use in the past. And I think it's interesting because people say, oh, but we recycle. And the thing is, yeah, you do your best, but they're forcing so much plastic on us that we can only recycle about 9% of what's out there. And people talk about recycling as it's the solution, but really it's, if you picture this like bathtub that's overflowing with plastic, and to stop it, you go for the mop, right? You're going to mop it up, but the spigot's still open and it's still flowing. You have to turn off the faucet, and then you can talk about the mop. But you'll never clean it up with the mop. You'll never clean it up with recycling. We have to reduce use, and that means finding alternatives, reuse systems where you can actually get a cup of coffee and drink the cup, return the cup, and get a different cup, like in the old days when we used to drink coffee in diners. But we can adapt that to modern day. There are companies that are out there doing it, and again, it's being driven by an industry that wants to continue to cut corners, to continue to increase their profits. And the other thing that's really interesting about plastics that a lot of people don't realize is plastics are sort of the new idea of the petroleum industry. So the oil and gas industry, which I mentioned earlier, is looking at the future, and they're thinking, no, maybe we're going to get to peak oil, and maybe we need a new expansion opportunity. And that's what plastic is. And that's why the amount of plastic being generated is expected to quadruple by 2050. So if you think your beaches are dirty now, wait till 2050, these are going to look like clean beaches. And frankly, they don't look clean now. So it's a big problem. And the solution has to lie with what companies are essentially feeding us. We can try to do our best, but it's really not an individual thing. They're not giving us a choice. And that's what needs to change. Oh, one more thing about that. Plastic is also a major source of carbon dioxide emissions. So here we started out talking about the conference of the parties for the climate convention. Well, this is a big component of it because they come from petroleum. We use lots of petroleum to make them and send them out, and sometimes they end up getting burned. That generates more carbon dioxide. So there's a lot of carbon dioxide around plastics. Another problem that if we solve it from a plastics perspective, it will also help us address the carbon problem.
Yeah. So what is Oceana doing to try to solve the plastic problem?
We're working on a bill in Congress called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, and it's a comprehensive bill that attacks the plastics problem from a number of different angles. But really what it comes down to is figuring out how to stop using things like plastic balloons, plastic water bottles, to have refillables. And the other thing is looking at the pollution that's being caused by the manufacturing facilities and the frontline communities that live near those facilities that are being exposed to toxic chemicals day in and day out. So we're working at the federal level. We're also working at the local level. We're working with companies like iFood in Brazil, which is Brazil's biggest takeout company. And they have now agreed to start phasing out plastic in their takeout deliveries. And we're looking at refillable options for beverage bottles. So there's a lot of different things we can do to cut down on this problem, because right now it's going up and we need it to go down.
You mentioned the plastic bill. You also talked about working to ban offshore drilling. Are there any other policies that Oceana is working on that you're really excited to talk about?
One is seafood traceability, which doesn't sound very interesting when I say it, but this is the one about how when you order fish, did you really get what you think you got? We did a lot of testing around this, and we found that a lot of times when we order seafood, we're being given something different, something less expensive, something maybe lower quality, maybe even something that isn't that healthy for us. And so what we're trying to do is require traceability of seafood from the boat to the plate, so that the consumer can actually get information about what the fish is, where it was caught, how it was caught. And when we do that, that starts to get at some of the problems, not only of us as consumers wanting to have the right seafood, but also the problems related to overfishing, illegal fishing, slave labor on fishing vessels start to come down when the fish comes into port. They have to show that documentation of where it came from. And, if there's something kind of shady in their business, that tends to become exposed. And so seafood traceability is another thing that we've been very focused on.
Yeah, it's just something that I don't think a lot of consumers think about, and that is definitely very scary. And I think I think lost in the climate conversation is the connection between climate and oceans. We talked about the acidification, the warming, just making ocean life really uninhabitable, and that is horrific for so many different reasons. So what does Oceana do to raise public awareness about global warming's impact on the oceans?
Well, we did a lot of work a few years back on this issue of ocean acidification, which again is another multisyllabic word that sounds like science, because it is. But that's really what happens when the carbon dioxide gets absorbed into the water. It changes the pH of the water. And when you're an animal like a clam or a lobster or crab that wants to get calcium carbonate into your shell, and that's harder when the water is more acidic, and that can lead to lack of survivability for these animals or lack of reproduction or whatever. And so we did a lot of education around that to try to build awareness about it. And we have hundreds of thousands of e-activists that we communicate with on a regular basis through our website, which is oceana.org. If you want to become a wave maker, that's what we call them. And we keep them involved and engaged and educated And we try to put them to work to make sure that their decision makers understand that, they want action on oceans.
Well, Oceana has just done so much in its 20 years to protect our oceans and marine life. You mentioned oceana.org, but where else can our audience learn more about what Oceana is doing?
Well, that's probably the best place. But keep an eye out on the web on oceana.org. Your podcast has been great. I know you featured one of our board members, Ted Danson, not too long ago. So that's another great opportunity. And get involved, sign up to be a wave maker, and we'll keep you in the loop. And you'll get lots of information and news on current events related to the oceans.
Jackie Savitz, thank you so much for joining the Climate Pod.
My pleasure, Ty. Thank you for having me.